You're listening to Nowhere to Run with Chris White on the Revelations Radio Network. Hey everybody, welcome to Nowhere to Run. Thank you for tuning into the show, however it is that you found it. If you've got any questions for me or anything, you can go to the website, which is nowheretorunradio.com, and you can email me there. My email directly is nowheretorun1984@gmail.com. And today I'm going to skip a lot of the formalities. I'll talk about what's going on with me and all that stuff in a different episode that I'll probably put together this weekend. But for now, I'm just going to play the audio from an interview that I just got done doing with a guy named Victor. I met Victor at the Politics of Religion conference in Fort Wayne, Indiana a few weeks back. And Victor is just and on one hand, he's just a regular guy, and on the other hand, he can be a great inspiration to all of us. I encourage you to stick with the whole interview. It's about an hour long or something like that. It certainly is building to something, and it's just a really great thing for Christians and for non-Christians. So if you're non-Christian and you're listening to this and thinking, okay, this is for Christians, just stick with them. Just stick with them. And it certainly affected me a lot, and I know that it's going to affect a lot more people out there. If you need to contact Victor, you can contact me, and I'll send an email to him. So here is Victor.
My name's Victor. I grew up in Glenview, which is just 20 miles north of Chicago. You know, I grew up like in the heart of John Hughes territory, so like 16 Candles and all those iconic Breakfast Club movies and Ferris Bueller. That was all shot in my neighborhood. Grew up totally different from everybody else. I was a White Sox fan in a Cub neighborhood, so I was always doing the opposite of what everyone else was doing, and I had a rebellious spirit, and I had a reputation for being rebellious. I was a poor student, and I just never focused very well. I grew up Catholic, and I was the type of kid that questioned everything, and so most of my teachers hated that. I would question why the sky was blue, all that kind of stuff. So in Catholic services, I always questioned why we did everything, and I never got answers. It was always, why are they ringing that bell? Why are we kneeling? Why are we standing? And my parents didn't really know the answers because they just were going along for the ride their whole life, and that always bothered me. And even as I got older, I started questioning JFK, 9/11, whatever it may be. I came across Rule by Secrecy by Jim Marrs when I was out of college and read that book, and just my eyes were open to a lot of that type of stuff, Freemasonry, Illuminati, Rothschilds, all that. And so I always just questioned. I always felt like there was something else going on, but I wasn't a believer. In fact, if anything, I was drifting away from, once I was in high school, I was no longer going to Catholic church and didn't really believe in anything. But some of my musical influences were like Public Enemy, KRS-One. So I was really into civil rights and taking and I had a heart for people that I felt were getting the shaft, I guess, from the man, if you will. And one of my best friends at the time, Johnny, became a Christian when we were in high school, and it really freaked me out because he became a completely new creation, and I didn't recognize him anymore. And he was my partner in crime. We did everything together. We listened to the same music, watched the same movies, and then he didn't want to do any of that stuff anymore. And I was like, I was turned off by that because he was trying to sell it to me, and I was enjoying my sin. I was enjoying what I was doing. I didn't understand why he didn't enjoy it anymore. So I was turned off by Christianity, and at no fault of his. You know, he went in his direction, and then I went in mine. But something that was pivotal in my life was I dated a Mormon. When I was a senior in high school, I got reintroduced from an old friend, an old classmate, and she was Mormon, and she would challenge me in my beliefs, or lack thereof, and she got me to think a lot just about what is out there. And we dated for several years, and even into college. And then she challenged me to find God, because if I was going to marry her, which that was starting to come up, you know, I was going to have to become Mormon and go through the temple and do all that. So I started investigating, and I was investigating Mormonism, and I was investigating whether there was even a God. I wasn't even sure anymore if there was a God. And she told me something. She said he would reveal himself if I seeked him. So I did for several months, almost a year, and I was not getting any answers. I was getting more frustrated, and I was starting to get angry at God and starting to question, if you're really there, why don't you show yourself to me? Because I was feeling lost, alone, and I was probably going about it wrong too. I had no direction. And one of the greatest things ever happened to me, I was in college, and I was at the end of my rope. I was getting ready to give up and just say, you know what, there is no God. And I was in the library, and I felt called to go upstairs at the top of to the top of the library for some reason. And I'd never been prompted by the Holy Spirit ever before then, so I didn't recognize what it was. But I felt drawn, and I get up there, and I'm kind of questioning, what am I doing up here? I have no business being up here. I need to go back downstairs and finish studying. And I just got brought down to my knees. I just fell to my knees, and I got the biggest, warmest, loving hug that I've ever received. I got filled with the Holy Spirit right there. I was by myself at the top of the stairs, and I'm on my knees crying, and it was warm, and it was so loving, and God whispered in my ear, I'm right here, and I love you. And it wrecked me, man. I just was crying, and I realized there that God was real and that he loved me. I'd never even considered that he loved me before, and I was to the point where I didn't even believe he existed. So that destroyed me. So, but what I didn't understand at the time was, okay, so now God's revealed himself to me and that he's real. So now I'm thinking, well, okay, so the Mormon thing is true. So I started going to Mormon church, and I'm considering even getting baptized now and doing and going down that road. But things just didn't feel right. I was starting to read the Bible for the first time, and I don't know, it was all religion again. And I had a bad taste in my mouth from my Catholic experience growing up, and it was feeling like the same thing, just repackaged. And that's what I didn't like. That love that I felt from the Father when he embraced me, I wasn't feeling that. It was you had to wear a tie. It was just, I don't know, it was religious, and it just kind of left a bad taste in my mouth. So I stopped going. I was doing that for several months, and then that just wasn't feeling good, and so I decided not to go with it, and that caused a strain on the relationship, and then the relationship ended, which was, probably a good thing. But after that, I didn't have no one there to disciple me, nobody to give me direction, so I floundered, and I was in college, so I was sitting, I was on the fence. I had one foot in the Word and one foot in the world, and it was a miserable place to be, and I floundered for a long time. I looked for affirmation in things like in women. If women found me attractive, I was always trying to make myself attractive to women, or so I would chase after women, or later I would chase after celebrities. I have quite the autograph collection. I don't know. Those were the things that would gratify my desires and make me feel good. And I met my wife, Andrea, in college, and we got married about 4 years after I graduated from college. And so we started going to church. We felt like that was the right thing to do. So I was kind of in and out of church for those 4 years. When we got married, we had promised each other that we would start going to church. She grew up in a church, and we felt that would be the right thing to do. So we started doing that, and we just were going to, I don't know, just your regular evangelical free churches and things. And I was getting fed, and I was growing. It was the first time I was really pursuing God. And then my wife got a job opportunity in North Carolina through her job. Now, at the time, we were both making great money. We were living in a very affluent neighborhood in the northern suburbs of Chicago. I had season tickets to Bears and White Sox and was going to all the clubs, doing everything that the world says would make you happy. And we had a great marriage. But I don't know, I still was never satisfied. And I kept chasing after the things of the world, but it wasn't satisfying me. And this job opportunity came, and it was to move to a small town in North Carolina. And I'm living in one of the richest suburbs at the time in America. and all my friends, all my family, everything is there. Like I said, I had a great job, a great career with a Fortune 500 company, and I didn't want to move to North Carolina. I went down there several times to look at housing, and it was so radically different from anything I grew up with. I wanted nothing to do with it. But for the first time in my life, I asked God what he wanted, and that was the biggest game changer of my life, and it was the best decision I ever made, was to say, you know what, God, I haven't ever asked you, what do you want? I've always done things my way, and it's never turned out all that great. So I'm sitting at my desk at work, and I felt prompted to go on the Internet and look at churches, because I figured, well, if I did move, hypothetically, which I won't, but if I was to move, I need to find a church down there. So I'm on my lunch break, I'm surfing, and this church comes up, and immediately I get filled with the Holy Spirit at my desk. I'm wrecked. I'm crying. I felt that warm, loving embrace again from God that I hadn't felt since college. And he said, this is the church that I'm sending you to. And I saw the picture of the pastor, and he said, that man is going to baptize you. Because I'd only been baptized as an infant through the Catholic Church. So he said, this man's going to baptize you. So I'm there sitting there. I'm wrecked. I'm crying. So my boss was sitting next to me, and I turned to her, and I just quit. I just quit my job right there. And like I said, I had an excellent career. I was a manager, an accounting manager in the investment department at a major Fortune 500 company, and I just quit my job right there on the spot. And that was the scariest thing I ever did. I called my wife after that and said, hey, let's take that job in North Carolina. I'll fill you in later. So we moved down there. I didn't tell her about the church, the word from God. I wanted to test the spirits. So we went down there, and we went to at least a dozen churches. And I saved the church that I knew God wanted us to go to last. And when we went to that church, after visiting a dozen other churches, we walked out of the service, and she said, I want to go to this church. I want to make this my church home. And I said, you know what? That's what God told me. And that was the first time I'd ever really had a confirmation like that from God. And it was great. And we didn't know anybody down there. We didn't have anybody except our church family. So we grew exponentially in that church, received the gifts of the Spirit down there. It was just such a blessing. And the people down there, I am who I am because of the great people at our church down in North Carolina. So, yeah, things are going great, but I can't find a job. So here I have an accounting degree, and I'm overqualified for every job interview I take, and I don't even get a phone call back from anybody. So now I'm starting to question, okay, God, you brought me down here. We found the church you wanted us to go to, and what's going on with the job here? So all of a sudden, all these video doors open. Video was always a hobby of mine. I don't have any formal training, but God opened the door for me. I started meeting people in the video business. A man by the name of Jesse Lewis was going to the church we were going to, and he owned a business where he makes the video backgrounds that you see in most churches today, behind like the praise and worship lyrics on the projector screens. So I started helping him. I met a former WCW pro wrestler who wanted to start a wrestling show, and I started helping him produce a TV show for his professional wrestling show. And then just other things just started coming up, and then everyone just said, hey, you know what, you need to start a business, and we'll refer people to you. And it was amazing. So one of the greatest things that happened to me during this was I met Tully Blanchard. Now, he was a professional wrestler in the 80s. And while I was consulting a TV station, and I met him at the TV station, he was doing an interview. And I was a big fan of his growing up as a kid. So I went there to get his autograph and nothing more. They didn't need me to work that day. I just came in to get his autograph. And I asked him, what are you doing here? And he said, I'm part of a prison ministry. Bill Glass, Champions for Life. I'm on the board of directors. And I'm thinking to myself, you, the pro wrestler, you do prison ministry? And at the time, my younger brother was in prison. And my brother had rededicated his life to the Lord while in prison because of prison ministry. So I really had a heart for that. And Tully Blanchard challenged me to go into the prisons with him. And he told me something I'll never forget. You're going to find more love in the prison than you will at any shopping mall in this country. And I was like, you got to be kidding me. To me, prison is scary. And he said, don't believe what you've seen on TV or in the movies. So I went into prison with Tully Blanchard, and it was one of the greatest experiences of my life. It was for the first time I shared my faith. I'd never led anybody to the Lord before. I'd never shared my faith with anybody, so that was all new, and it was scary, but I loved it. And so to this day, I continue to do prison ministry, and it's a passion of mine, and I just absolutely love it. Something else that happened when I was doing the video work was I made a music video that appeared on BET, on Rap City and on 106 and Park. And I got introduced to the music business that way, and just saw all the shady stuff that goes on with the music business, and just the propaganda, and just working in TV, I've gotten to see how fake everything is on TV and how controlled everything is. So that, with some of my conspiracy theory background, I guess it's jaded me over the years, I guess you could say. But it's definitely been it was a blessing to do all the video work I did. It was a lot of fun. And like I said, while I was down there in North Carolina, I was growing in the Lord. It was great, because I used to think that prior to going down there, I was a pre-tribulation rapture person. I thought that being a Christian meant you watched TBN, and I learned a lot. But I still struggled with pride, even after being filled with the Spirit. I still was continuing in some of my sin. I was looking at pornography, lusting. I was still dealing with that, and I was wondering why. At the time, I didn't understand why I hadn't been fully delivered from that. And that was something I wrestled with. But things were good. But then it was time to move back to Chicago. So we were down there for 4 years, and God was calling us back here, and I felt that God really wanted me to begin to witness to my family. And we had a daughter down in North Carolina, so we felt that it would be good to move up here, have the grandparents, spend time with our daughter. And when I moved back to Chicago, I started questioning a lot of things, and just questioning why the church was lacking its teeth, and why it had, I was starting to see church statistics, that 75% of youth, fall out of the faith once they, graduate from high school and enter college. Things like that, where only 1 to 2% of Christian men share their faith on a daily basis, and only 10% have ever shared their faith. So as I was getting my eyes opened up to statistics like that were really sad statistics to me, I was starting to really question a lot of things and seeing hypocrisy in the church, and I was getting a little disgruntled. And at that time, I read the book No Compromise by Keith Green, and that book really changed. It changed me in a lot of ways. And Keith Green is a hero of mine to this day. Also read Myth of the Christian Nation by Greg Boyd, and that book really, really changed me. Because I saw what was going on in the church, and it was something that always troubled me, but I never was able to put my finger on until I read that book. Something that Greg Boyd says in that book, he says, the best way to get a Christian to put down their cross is to hand them a sword. And that's what I see so prevalent even today, especially with the recent killing of Osama bin Laden. Just seeing the pride, seeing people want to just, I don't know, I've heard so many Christians say they wanted to make a parking lot out of Iraq and Afghanistan after 9/11, and I just never understood that. It always seemed wrong to me, this wanting to control the United States, wanting to control the government, wanting to rule with an iron fist. It seemed very Constantine. It didn't seem Jesus. Jesus washed his disciples' feet. He was their master, but yet he went on his knees, washed their feet, and he said, do likewise. He taught them to be a servant. And I think so many times that's what we're lacking. I think we want to control and run things. But we got to learn to die to self and to those ambitions of ruling. I also read Shane Claiborne's book, Irresistible Evolution. And that book also really had an impact on me of wanting to just reach the undesirables. You know, doing prison ministry, yeah, you see a lot of people down and out. And so my wife and I already had a heart for that. She was volunteering in a pregnancy crisis center. So our heart has really been for people that are being left on the sidelines, that are being forgotten. So I felt like I was just unevenly yoked, even within my own church. I was at a church here in Chicago it's in the military. There's a large naval base here, so there's a lot of Navy, a lot of military, a lot of ex-Navy. And I don't have no problems with the military, but just the attitude of this hoorah, we need to kill everybody attitude was a little disheartening, and it concerned me. So I did one of the hardest things I've ever had to do is God called my wife and I into the wilderness, and so we stopped attending a institutionalized church, I guess you could say, and we just started really seeking God, getting in His Word more, and just having home fellowship. And it's hard. It's hard because I was the guy running sound. I was the guy running the projector. I was the guy helping run the circus. I was one of the ringleaders. I was the guy coming up with new ways to entertain the church. I was the one making the videos, and so I had to take a step back because I felt like I may be part of the problem. And so God called us out, and it was hard, but I've seen exponential growth since we've done that. And one of the things that's since happened, I found that I've had to rely more on God. I was kind of relying. I was relying on the pastor to give me a rhema word every Sunday. I would come, the world would kick my butt for 6 days, and then I'd come back, and then I'd come dragging my tail on Sunday, hoping to get a pick-me-up message to get me through the next week. And so I had to rely more on God instead of man when I came out into the wilderness. What was great is when I came into the wilderness and I cut some ties with some of the people in my past, I said, God, I need like-minded people in my life. And now God is so great. He has given me all these new relationships. The people I'm friends with today, I didn't even know 3 years ago. Some of my best friends right now, I didn't even know 2 and 3 years ago. And the God appointments have been just astounding. One of them has been you, Chris. When I first got into the wilderness, I started finding sermons online and just started looking for things online. And a friend got me, pointed me to Revelation Radio, and I found you, and I found Russ Dizdar, and started listening to Scott Johnson. I found True News. All these people I started listening to online, and the one thing that's been a game changer for me is I was going to pick up my brother from prison, and I was going on a long car ride to Southern Illinois. So I downloaded a whole bunch of podcasts, and I downloaded one of yours, and that was about one of the first times I'd ever even listened to you. And what stood out was that you were speaking about evangelism, and that's something that's always been on my heart since I do prison ministries, and I like to witness to people. So I was like, I'll listen to this, evangelism, that's good. And in there, you played a clip from Mark Cahill. And in that clip, he talked about witnessing and going to gay pride parades. And that wrecked me. I had to pull over in the middle of a cornfield, and I was just crying that I found a man that loved the homosexual community so much that he was willing to go out there and be in the midst of all them and share the love of Jesus with them. And that wrecked me because when I was a young kid, I had somebody in my neighborhood had touched me inappropriately and tried to force themselves on me. So I grew up with the shame of that my whole life, and I don't know if I would say a root spirit of homosexuality was within me, but there was always just something weird about it, and just, I don't know, there was a weird attraction to some of that stuff sometimes. I never acted on it, but I always felt just so much shame and guilt that I would even be attracted to something that I hated. And so I've always had a heart for that community, just because I know that so many people that are in there have been abused, and they don't know the Lord, and they don't get the affirmation from God, because their nature is the complete opposite of God's nature, and they're lacking affirmation, so they're affirming themselves with a pride parade, and I know how much they're hurting. So when I heard that just touched me so much, and that was such a blessing. So then I read, one of the books that changed my life was The One Thing You Can't Do in Heaven by Mark Cahill, and it really got me off the sideline and got me into shopping malls and going to parades and doing those sort of things. No longer just going into prisons, but sharing my faith on a daily basis, just as I go. And Matthew 10 has become a life verse for me, just as you go, heal the sick, raise the dead, those type of things. And another person that's been instrumental in that is Todd White. Getting to meet him and hanging out with him and seeing his heart of just going and praying for people when you see people in the mall. You know, that's what the church is called to do. We're called to have compassion on these people and love on them and pray for them and share with them. And so this all came from going into the wilderness. And it's been such a blessing. Last year at the Gay Pride Parade, there's some abominations going on there. I mean, it is not for everybody, but I would suggest praying about that one before I would send anybody there, because that's a tough crowd to witness to. But you know what? I had grown men crying on my shoulder, people crying. There are so many people down there that hate what they do, and they have no direction because they're only receiving hate. At the Gay Pride Parade last year in Chicago, there were two kinds of people down there. There was two groups, I would say, of Christians. There was a group of Christians at the end of the parade that throws rocks at the people with signs that say God hates fags. And then there's people there that are from Unitarian churches handing out water, just saying, hey, God loves you no matter what you do, and keep on doing what you're doing. It's all good. So you have these two extremes at the Gay Pride Parade, and there's very little people bringing balance to that. And so I would really challenge anybody out there to go to the parades and love on these guys, but share the truth. You don't need to tell them how much an abomination homosexuality is. Show them the Ten Commandments, that the lying, the gossiping, just anything, killing, stealing, it's all just as bad. And, that community is killing themselves. The oldest man I saw at the Gay Pride Parade was in his 40s. And I think the average gay man lives to be like 44 or 45. And and it's sad. And they're sad. There was no joy. It was a parade, but there was no joy there. It was all fake. Everyone there was gay or high. Drunk or high. And that's how they had to, even enjoy what they were doing. So it was very sad, and they need the Lord so desperately. Another great thing that happened while during this trip in the wilderness that I've been on is I went to a juvenile correction center 2 years ago, and I was there, and there was a young boy there that was really causing trouble and being disruptive. And I felt in my spirit that I knew God loved him. And that's something I've really gotten a hold of from guys like Todd White and a brother named S.J. Hill. They've just really put in my spirit just in showing me how much the Father really loves us, how much he just truly loves us. His price in heaven was paid for our souls. And I've finally gotten a hold of that and realized how much the Father really loves us, and that how much of a sacrifice, Jesus, that his blood being shed and on Calvary's cross, how much that means. I've really, really just started to realize all this. And I'm trying to love people into the kingdom, and I'm seeing fruit from that. And this boy, Ryan, he's over there causing wreck. He's being a mess and being disruptive. And I just started praying. I said, God, I know how much you love this guy. And he's acting this way because he's hurt. Please give me a word for him. And this has never happened in my whole life, so I don't want to sound super spiritual to all the listeners, but God gave me, I started getting filled with the Spirit. I started speaking in tongues, and all of a sudden, I'm reading his mail. I told him everything he's ever done, pretty much. And I don't remember what I even told him. I had to ask him what I told him. I just started spewing out all kinds of stuff. And he starts crying, and I'm crying, and I don't even know what I'm saying to the boy. He runs out of the room. He comes back with the guard 5 minutes later. He calls me to the side. He goes, how did you know all of that? Please tell me. And I said, I don't even know what I said to you. You're going to have to repeat it back to me. I go, I don't even know what just happened. I go, God had a word for you, but I go, can you please tell me what I said? He said that he told me that I had told him, he's like, you told me that I just got here 2 days ago and that I've tried to kill myself and that nobody in my family will even talk to me and that I have nobody. And he just went on and on and on about all the things I had said to him. And, of course, this was a word, from God. And because of that, he was blown away and said, how can you know this? And I said, God, this is how much God loves you. And he wants you to know him. And it struck up a relationship. And now I write Ryan on a regular basis. I talk to him on the phone. And I've gone to visit him now that he's in prison. He's going to be in prison for for the next 25 years. He's an 18-year-old kid. And here's the great thing. I recently sent him one of Mark Cahill's book, One Heartbeat Away. And because of that book, he gave his life to the Lord. So look at the way God has ordained our steps. Had I not found a Chris White podcast, I may never have heard of Mark Cahill. Had I not ever heard of Mark Cahill, I may have never sent Ryan a Mark Cahill book. And now Ryan is saved. Now he may have gotten saved through other ways, but I just love to see how God uses all these things. It's so exciting. It's so exciting to me. So, so last summer I'm in a prison out in Ohio, and I'm just sharing with some brothers out in the yard and in the gym, and started talking to this one brother, and I only talked to him for about 10 minutes, but he got wrecked. He was just crying, and I could see he was really moved. So I'm like, hey, I'm like, have you ever gotten a visit? Do you have any family? He's like, I don't have anybody. Nobody writes me. No one's ever visited me. I said, here, give me your number. So I write him. And he writes me back, and he says, I'm getting out in July, and I have nowhere. I have nothing. Nowhere to go. I have nothing. I don't even want to get out of prison. I'm going to be off of parole. They're not going to put me in a halfway house. They're not going to put me anywhere. They're just going to put me on a bus. And, oh, boy, my heart just wept for this. My heart ached for this. I was like, this is, Father, what do I do with this? And God put it on my heart to invite him into our home. Now, here's a man I spoke in a prison 800 miles away for 10 minutes, and I've written one letter to him, and he's written me 3 letters and telling me, and he's not asking me for anything. He's not asking to come here. He's not asking for help. He's just pouring out his heart because he doesn't even have friends in prison. He's a loner. He has nobody. So he's pouring out his heart to me because he's had no one to talk to for ages in the prison. And I share this with my wife and, get to praying about it and just, God, what can we do? I'm looking for places where this man can go live. I'm looking for halfway houses. I'm looking for other, for single men that wouldn't mind taking him in. And God God keeps telling me over and over again, I need to do the good that I know to do, or else it's sin. James 4:17, type stuff. And I know what to do, but I'm like, how do I bring a strange man from prison into my house? Now I have 2 daughters. I have a 6-year-old and a 1-year-old, and I'm going to bring a stranger into this house. And time and time again, God keeps telling me, invite him to my house. And I was listening to a Keith Green CD, and when Keith Green says, he brings people to your door, and you turn them away, and you smile and say, God bless you, be at peace, and all heaven just weeps. Oh my goodness, that just wrecks me. That wrecks me. That's what I've been doing my whole life. I've been telling people, God bless you. I'll pray for you. And, it's garbage. I hate it. That's what the rest of the world does. So I write him and I say, Brian, I want you to come live with us. So when he gets out of prison, we put him on a Greyhound bus and we bring him to our house. And Brian, within 24 hours, we got him a job. In this economy, we get him in 24 hours, he has a job working in a warehouse. And I was able, since he's living in my house, it's the perfect opportunity to disciple somebody. So I'm discipling him every day. He's part of our Bible study. He joins our men's group. He's in our home fellowship, and it's just It's amazing, the fruit of it. So then he lost his job. He was going through some tough times and getting discouraged. And I just kept telling him, God's got the perfect job for you out there. He's got the perfect job for you. I promise you. I know that. He didn't bring you here all the way from Cleveland for nothing. So get this. He's sending out hundreds of resumes. And before he'd gone to prison, he had been working in a steel mill in Cleveland back in the 90s. So a steel mill out here calls him, and they say, hey, we want you to come in for an interview. And he says, I have a felony. Everywhere, I'm talking hundreds of places, when he told them he had a felony, they said, sorry, we don't hire ex-cons. This place was the only place that said, yeah, that's not a problem. They bring him in. They say, hey, we see that you worked at a steel company back in the 90s in Cleveland. The owner of the steel mill says, I toured that mill back in 95, and back when you worked there. He knew his bosses. He knew Brian's old bosses back from the mid-90s. He calls over there, and these guys are like, hey, you need to hire Brian. He was the hardest working guy we ever had. I mean, that's how good God is, man. So that's just being obedient. So now he's got 401k, he's got benefits, he's got a career, and that's what the kingdom looks like, man. That's what we need to start doing. I had so many people tell me, doesn't the government have programs like that, to do for stuff like that? We don't need to be looking to the government. We need to be looking at ourselves. The kingdom is here. We need to die to self. Now I am so blessed. I have a large home. I have 4 bedrooms. It was no sacrifice. Now I look at it, I'm like, what kind of sacrifice is that to put a man in one of my 4 bedrooms? That's not a sacrifice. This is what the church looks like. And that's something I got really challenged by when I read Greg Boyd's book, The Myth of the Christian Nation. I know Christians are pro-life, but really, we're really just pro-birth. We don't want to see fetuses be destroyed. We want to see them born. But what happens then? When the girl gets kicked out of her house, because she chooses life, are you willing to take that girl in, that high school girl, and help her raise that child so she could finish school and have a chance in life? That's what being pro-life is. That's the challenge I'm putting out to people, is we need to start bringing people into our homes. Especially with the economy being the way it is. That's what the kingdom looks like. That's what the early church looked like, and I'm seeing the fruit of that. And Brian's story is just the beginning. And now, and a lot of my friends have been now inspired to want to help other people coming out of prison or whatever it might be, and they're starting to open their homes because they're seeing just the fruit of it, and that's obedience. And I've been blessed so much by him living here, and it's been an honor to be used by God, in this area. And like I said, seeing Ryan, just going to prison. Jesus said, what we've done unto the least of these, we're doing unto him.
What would you say to somebody that's, they're wanting to do more, but oftentimes they're like, well, I'm waiting for God to kind of show me this ministry, or where do I start, or I'm not qualified, or what would you say to somebody that has the right intentions, but what's the next step?
Well, there are certain things to pray for. Yes, if you're going to start a ministry, or if there's things that are going to be very time-consuming, that are going to pull you away from your family, yes, those things definitely need to be taken in prayer. But when I invite people to go to into a prison with me, if the doors of a prison are open, I want to be there. And some people tell me, well, I need to pray about that. And I said, well, are you available that day? Do you have a scheduling conflict? They say no. I said, well, then you just need to go. That's not something you need to pray about. Just go. For that type of thing. If you're available, then just go. If it's starting a ministry, if it's something big where it's going to require money or it's going to require a lot of time where you're going to be away from people, yes, you want to be in prayer whether God's called you to that group of people because it's going to be pulling you away from something else. But if going, like I said, Matthew 10 has become a life verse for me, and we got to put away our fears, and it's as you go, heal the sick, raise the dead, and we just need to be doers of the word. We got to step out in faith, and Jesus said we're going to do greater miracles. We'll see greater things, and I believe that. I actually believe that Jesus meant that. So I'm clinging to those promises. And I'm not chasing after signs and wonders, but those signs and wonders will follow. So I'm trusting in God, and I've seen the greatest breakthroughs when I've poured myself out. When I've been at the Gay Pride Parade, or when I'm in a prison, I got a word of knowledge for a kid that has saved his life and his soul, because I went and loved somebody that was not lovable. I went to a place that nobody wants to go to, you know. And it's not because I get great joy out of going into jail. The food is nasty. It's a bad place. I come out feeling like, you know, like there's demons jumping on my back when I leave the place. But it's, you know, I come under attack that whole